Have you ever caught yourself staring out the window, remembering something that happened years ago, and feeling that old anger creeping back in? Maybe it was something your adult child said, or a decision someone made that changed your life without your consent. Maybe it was unfair and you were right to feel upset. But now, years later, that feeling still lingers, and it's exhausting. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. So many of us, especially after 60, carry around more than just memories. We carry the weight of unspoken resentment, unresolved hurt, and a quiet but persistent frustration with the way life has turned out in certain areas. Sometimes it feels like there's a storm inside, just waiting to be triggered. And let's be honest, at this age, we don't have energy to waste on storms we can't control. That's why today, we're having a real conversation about something we often don't talk about enough: anger. Not the kind of explosive rage you see on TV, but the simmering kind. The slow burn resentment. The clenched jaw in the middle of the night. The ache in your chest when you think, "Why did that happen to me?" Or, "Why didn't they treat me better?" This isn't just about managing emotions. It's about protecting your health, your joy, and your peace of mind. Because anger, when it stays too long, drains us. It tightens our bodies, clouds our thinking, and pushes away the peace we've worked so hard to find. And the truth is, you deserve better. You deserve a calmer heart and a quieter mind. You deserve to feel light again. So today we're going to explore something powerful: how to stop being angry. Not by pretending you're fine, not by stuffing it down, but by truly understanding where that anger comes from, what it's doing to you, and how you can finally let it go. Let's start here. Most of us were taught to be strong, to be nice, to keep going no matter what. We were taught not to make a scene. And for a while, that worked. But what happens when you've spent a lifetime saying, "It's okay," when deep down, it wasn't? What happens when you've given so much to everyone else, and no one ever asked, "But how are you doing?" That's when anger begins to take root. Quietly, patiently. It waits for a moment to rise, when someone forgets to call, when you feel overlooked, when someone disrespects your boundaries. And suddenly, all that suppressed emotion comes roaring back. Anger isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign that something inside you is still hurting, still looking for justice, still waiting to be heard. But if we don't learn how to sit with it, understand it, and release it, it can harden us. And that's not what we want, not at this stage in life. The truth is, anger wears many faces. Sometimes it looks like silence. Other times, it shows up as sarcasm, sharp remarks, or distance. But behind all of that is a simple truth. Anger is pain that hasn't been processed. And if we don't address it with honesty and compassion, it turns inward. It makes us bitter. It robs us of joy. It can even make us sick. So how do we begin to break free? It starts with one powerful idea. You are not your anger. Anger is a feeling, not a fact. It rises, it falls. It comes, it goes. And just because you feel it doesn't mean you have to obey it. You can feel angry and choose not to act in anger. You can notice it and not let it take over. That alone is strength. There's a quote I love. An insult doesn't make a person act. It's how they feel about themselves that does. Think about that. So often we think someone else makes us mad. But the truth is, our reaction comes from what we already believe about ourselves. If we feel unappreciated, an offhand comment can feel like a slap. If we feel powerless, someone's tone can sound like an attack. But if we know our worth, deeply, calmly, then those same things lose their sting. This is where the real healing begins. Not by changing the people around you, not by rewriting the past, but by coming home to yourself, by learning to say, "Yes, that hurt, but I won't let it own me anymore." By choosing peace, not because you're giving up, but because you're taking your life back. And peace doesn't mean becoming passive. It means becoming wise. It means pausing before reacting. It means walking away sometimes, not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to protect your energy. It means recognizing that every minute spent in anger is a minute stolen from your joy, your laughter, your freedom. It means understanding that your anger may have been justified, but it's no longer useful. Imagine carrying a heavy rock for 30 years. At some point, you don't even remember why you picked it up. You just know it's been hurting your back. What would happen if you finally set it down? Who would you be without it? You'd be lighter, stronger, freer. And you'd finally have both hands free to hold something better, like joy, connection, or the quiet thrill of peace. Let's not forget, too, that many of us have been angry with life itself. Angry that our bodies have changed. Angry that loved ones drifted away. Angry that the plans we had didn't quite turn out. It's okay to admit that. Life hasn't always been fair, and grief often hides under anger's mask. But here's something gentle to hold on to. Your life isn't over yet. You're not done growing. You're not done becoming. You are allowed to feel everything: anger, sadness, confusion, and then you are allowed to choose peace anyway. Every moment you take a deep breath instead of snapping back, every time you let go of an old hurt and say, "I'm done carrying this." Every time you forgive, not for them, but for you reclaim a little more of your strength. You stop being angry not by forcing yourself to be happy, but by being honest with your pain and then letting it pass through. You do it by tending to your heart the way you would a garden, gently, patiently, with love. And in that place of quiet strength, something beautiful starts to bloom. Not just peace, but power. Not the kind of power that controls others, but the kind that sets you free. Because when you stop being angry with life, life has a funny way of softening. Doors open, hearts open, and the world begins to look just a little brighter. Sometimes peace begins in the smallest moments, not with grand declarations or dramatic forgiveness, but with a pause, a breath. That moment when you catch yourself about to snap and choose instead to breathe through it. That's power. That's healing. And that's the kind of strength no one can take from you. You see, one of the greatest myths we've been told is that anger makes us strong. That if we let go, people will walk all over us. But real strength isn't about barking back or proving a point. It's about remaining centered even when the world around you feels unsteady. It's about being the calm in the middle of the storm, not the storm itself. And let's be honest, many of us grew up in a time when emotions weren't something we talked about openly. You were expected to carry on, to keep your chin up, to swallow the hard things. Maybe you weren't allowed to express disappointment or grief. Maybe you had to be the strong one, always. That strength helped you survive, yes, but it may have also left you with pockets of pain that never had the chance to heal. That's why so many women in their 60s, 70s, and beyond find themselves suddenly overwhelmed by emotions they thought were long gone. Anger shows up in unexpected ways, snapping at the cashier, feeling irritated over small things, or suddenly crying during a quiet moment. That's not weakness. That's your soul finally exhaling. It's okay to feel it. But then comes the choice. Do you want to live there? Or are you ready to let it move through and make space for something better? Anger isn't just an emotion, it's a messenger. It tells us where our boundaries were crossed, where our hearts were wounded, and where something still needs care. If you treat it like a teacher instead of a tyrant, you'll start to see the wisdom underneath. Anger says, pay attention here. But once you've listened and understood, you don't have to let it lead. Imagine this. You're driving, and a warning light comes on. It tells you something needs attention, but you wouldn't rip out the dashboard just to shut it off, right? You'd fix what's underneath. That's how anger works. The feeling isn't the problem. It's what's fueling it that needs your care. And that's where gentleness comes in. You don't overcome anger with force. You meet it with curiosity. Instead of asking, "Why am I still mad about this?" try asking, "What part of me hasn't felt heard yet?" Or, "What wound still needs tending?" That shift in approach makes all the difference. You may find that beneath the anger is sadness, or fear, or disappointment that no one noticed how much you gave, how hard you tried. And when you meet those feelings with compassion, not judgment, you begin to unburden yourself. The truth is, anger thrives when we feel powerless, when we feel unseen. But you are not powerless, not now. You have the wisdom of experience, the strength of survival, and the right to choose peace at any moment. You don't need anyone's permission to release what's been hurting you. And you don't need to wait for an apology to begin healing. That can be the hardest part, can't it? Waiting for someone else to say, "I'm sorry." Waiting for someone to understand the hurt they caused. But what if they never do? What if they can't? Will you carry that pain forever just to prove a point? Forgiveness doesn't mean what happened was okay. It means you're no longer willing to give that pain a seat at your table. It means you're ready to be free. And sometimes the person you need to forgive most is yourself, for not knowing better, for staying too long, for reacting instead of responding, for being human. Give yourself that grace. You've come this far. You deserve peace, not punishment. It's never too late to learn new ways to respond. When something upsets you, pause before speaking. Breathe. Ask yourself, will this matter a year from now? 5 years from now? If the answer is no, it may not be worth your energy today. Protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's sacred. And remember, some things are out of your control. People will say what they say. The past is what it is. But you always have control over how you respond. That's where your power lives, in the space between the trigger and your reaction. Make that space bigger. Fill it with breath, kindness, patience. You'll be amazed at how many storms you avoid. There's something incredibly beautiful that happens when you stop needing to be right and start needing to be well. You begin to listen more and argue less. You stop holding on to offenses like trophies. You start to see people not as enemies or obstacles, but as fellow travelers, also doing their best, also stumbling along the way. You begin to understand that not everyone deserves a reaction, and not everything needs one. The more you practice this, the lighter you become. And yes, it is a practice. Some days will be easier than others. Some moments will still sting. But if you keep choosing peace, again and again, it becomes your natural state. Like a well-worn path you return to without even thinking. And here's the best part. Your peace is contagious. When you stay calm, others feel it. Your presence becomes a place of comfort. You become the lighthouse, not the storm. That's not just good for you, it's good for everyone around you. So if you've spent years carrying anger like a shield, you can put it down now. You don't need to fight anymore. You're safe. You've earned rest. And peace. That's your new superpower. And maybe that's the most unexpected gift of aging. We finally realize that peace is not something the world gives us. It's something we build for ourselves. We've learned the hard way that anger can burn bridges we might later wish we had. But peace lets us cross back over, even if it's just in our own hearts. If there's something I want you to remember, it's this. Being at peace doesn't mean you were never hurt. It means you've stopped letting that hurt shape your story. You get to rewrite the narrative now, not as the woman who was betrayed, dismissed, or overlooked, but as the woman who faced life head-on and made a choice to grow, not harden. That's what true strength looks like after 60. It's not about gritting your teeth and pushing through anymore. It's about softening into your wisdom, choosing clarity over chaos, choosing presence over past pain. Anger wants to keep you in the story of what should have been. Peace invites you into the story of what can still be. Because let's not forget, you're still here. You're still breathing. and every breath is a chance to begin again. There will be moments when you feel that old heat rise in your chest. When someone says the wrong thing, or you're reminded of a past wound. In those moments, come back to this simple truth. You do not owe anger your energy. You owe yourself peace. You owe your heart some space to breathe. And if that means stepping outside for a walk, turning off the news, closing the door for a few minutes of silence, do it. Not as a retreat, but as a sacred return to yourself. When you remove yourself from chaos, you create the conditions for clarity. And clarity is what lets you respond wisely instead of reacting emotionally. I know there are women listening right now who have held anger like a secret in their bodies for decades. Maybe you were hurt in ways no one saw. Maybe you had to keep quiet for the sake of others. And maybe now, in the stillness of this stage of life, it's all starting to rise. That's not a crisis. That's a calling. It's your soul saying, let's clean this up. Let's lighten the load. Let's make room for something softer. You don't need to carry every emotion to the finish line. You don't need to prove how strong you were by how much you endured. You can simply let go. Not all at once, maybe one layer at a time. One memory at a time. One breath at a time. And yes, it takes courage. But it also takes trust. Trust that you don't need your anger to be respected. Trust that your value doesn't come from fighting back. Trust that who you are, calm, grounded, present, is more powerful than any outburst ever could be. This is not about perfection. You'll still get upset sometimes. That's human. But peace gives you a cushion, a pause, a place to land before you say or do something you'll regret. There's a line I've always loved. You are the first person your anger hurts. And it's true. Every bitter thought, every grudge, every replayed argument, we feel it more than the person we're mad at ever will. And sometimes we hold on to anger thinking it gives us control, when in reality, it's what keeps us stuck. So let's not be stuck anymore. Let's move. Let's shift. Let's heal. Start small. When someone upsets you, instead of jumping to defend yourself, ask yourself, is this about me or is it about them? Often, it's about their pain, their fear, their insecurity. Don't pick it up. Don't let it stick. When you feel that fire start to rise, picture it turning to light instead of smoke. Picture yourself lighting a candle instead of fanning flames. Respond with grace, not because they deserve it, but because you do. Because your heart is too precious to be dragged through every argument, every wound, every offense. And if you need to cry, cry. Anger unspoken turns inward. But tears are a kind of truth. They cleanse. They soften. They show that you're alive, still feeling, still open. Don't be afraid to feel. But don't build a house inside your pain. You have a right to rest. You have a right to joy. You have a right to put down every burden you've carried for the sake of peace, including the ones no one else ever saw. Think of what your life could feel like if you weren't carrying that anger anymore. How much lighter your chest would be. How much more you could hear, see, notice, appreciate. Imagine watching the sunset without the weight of yesterday. Imagine having a conversation without needing to win. Imagine waking up without that tightness in your heart. You can have that. You can choose that. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Your legacy isn't your pain. It's your peace. The wisdom you carry is a gift. The younger generation needs it. The people around you feel it. And every time you choose kindness over conflict, grace over grudge, silence over shouting, you're not just healing yourself. You're healing generations. So if no one has told you this today, you are allowed to be at peace. You are allowed to be free. You are allowed to let go of the anger, the hurt, the should-haves, and why didn'ts. You are allowed to breathe. And if you've made it this far in life, and you're here, listening, with an open heart, then you've already done something remarkable. You've said yes to growth. And that alone is worth celebrating. If this video resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What are you choosing to let go of today? How have you found peace in your own journey? Your story might be exactly what another woman needs to hear. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. We share uplifting, practical content every week to help you live with more clarity, joy, and strength at any age. Here's to living lightly. Here's to letting go. Here's to loving life, fully, peacefully, and freely. You've earned it.